From hunter and gatherers to soul hunter and harborers. When we hunted for survival, the reward was food and shelter. Now we hunt for life, the reward becomes the soul. It's only through the soul we live on the path of love. Good morning, sleepyhead. How does it feel to be awake on this beautiful day today? Or are we still on the hunt for that feeling? Because one thing that we're here to do before any day starts, or simply embark on any other activity, is to be awake. And to feel awake simply means to feel grounded in our physical sensations, to feel our physical presence, to be receptive and present. But sometimes those sensations may not feel so pleasant or comfortable, and when they don't, we resort to seeking an outlet to change that experience. So that outlet can either be through the mind in some thought form or some physical sensation altering form. But rarely any of us resort to being in the experience itself and ask, what is it that I need or can do to soothe it? Not escape it, but soothe it. Because connection is soothing. And it's not easy to find the connection that grounds us. But if it was, then we would all be easy to awaken to. It is probably one of the most challenging experiences we all have. To receive the sensory information and use the mind to navigate us to finding a solution to a given discomfort, while recognizing that which indeed feels comfortable and soothing. Instead, what we end up doing is using the mind as a route to escape in a different time dimension, which prevents the process of awakening. And rather than coming closer to cultivating an inner dialogue, we separate sensations from thoughts. The opposite route to awakening is to be in thought about what is next, how we would like it to be, or the thought of how it was. The biggest challenge we have is actually in facing the thought of it is what it is, and finding acceptance in that present experience. And that process of acceptance is like a dance. You swing left and right, body and mind, until learning the steps of the dance. So the way I look at awakening, it's like a dance, the dance of physical presence in the now and its connection to thought. If you're here, but your mind rather be somewhere else, it is rather like living in two places all at once. So you're pulled out in different directions until finding the coherency and unity of being one. To picture it, imagine you need to place your right foot in front of your left to make a turn or swing, but instead, your thought is where the left foot is going to go next. So your right foot moves, but so does your left, and you end up intertwining your feet. You lose balance and fall. Here, there is a lack of coherency between thought and sensation or movement. And so awakening is about finding that coherency in the environment we are in. It's only then we connect to the perception of meaning. We cannot recognize meaning in anything that is disconnected or incongruent, as it feels constantly unsettling. So the only meaning there is in being able to settle in our experience of the moment, feel connected to it through all of our receptors, which is all there is to awakening, a connection to our sensory receptive system. When we speak about awakening, it is a process that starts with our sensory system and not mind. The mind's job is only to interpret the information accumulated through the senses. Hence, an awakening experience is first felt and not rationalized. So one's level of intelligence is irrelevant to one's ability to awaken. The only benefit an intelligent mind provides is the ability to rationalize the process and verbally relay that information. To relay the information so you can discuss and communicate about it. And this is the ability humans have to verbally exchange information, think, and communicate instead of bonding on simply primal level. At the end of the day, communication is only an outlet to connection on mind-to-mind level. And it makes life easier when people speak or communicate the same language. So even if you bond with someone on pure physical level or emotional level, when that experience cannot be verbalized, when it cannot be translated and perceived accordingly by the other, the connection starts becoming distorted. Again, we're all humans, so ultimately we seek to connect on at least all three levels: physical attraction, emotional intimacy, but also mind perception level. When one of the three is missing, our bond or relationship cannot sustain in time, which causes either an end to that relationship, as there is a missing component in our ability to relate to one another. What many choose is to continue living a dual life where more people are needed to fill in or compensate for our unmet needs. Needs that, when we understand and comprehend, we create awareness to those needs through speech. Again, those needs are not material. Material compensation only comes into play as a need in a relationship when one of the three basic human needs or soul needs are unmet. To repeat those needs, they are unmet physical attraction, unmet emotional intimacy and connection, unmet ability for mental stimulation to stimulate each other's minds upon achieving agreement in perception. The needs I'm referring to are our soul's needs, the needs that, when attended to, provide us with the ability to emotionally regulate, feel nourished, nurtured, safe, and protected. And even if some may live unaware to this truth, this is ultimately what each one is here looking for. So all who are overly ambitious, overly materially attached, everyone that is on a dating spree and constantly changing from a person to person, the reality is each and every one of these people unconsciously is not able to find peace in their soul, so is externally becoming over preoccupied, being on the hunt for the soul. But how does one know what that soul is, what it feels like? It only comes alive when it is awakened. Those which some may call lucky are simply those who either had that awakening experience created through their bond with their mother when growing up, or were fortunate to meet another who triggered the process of awakening. And yes, I say triggered, since the moment an awakening happens, all rationality goes out the window. It is an overpowering sensory experience that the mind simply needs the time to rationalize and organize. And what it may experience at first is fear or anxiety, a panic, a shock to what it perceived prior to be safe. So when it comes down to falling in love, this is what many fear the most, of going through this shaking awakening experience. Why? Because it can take two routes. One would be to make the choice to love and see what that novelty or unknown experience is all about, to be receptive of the information provided through the sensory experience itself. Or the other, to retract from it due to fearful sensations of the unknown or unfamiliar senses that are resurfacing. As we all know, that fear leads to experiencing pain. Imagine you're receiving a sensation, let's say I'm caressing your arm, and let's assume you were never hugged or caressed as a child. It is a novelty sensation for you. You feel that it is warming, soothing, but also to receive it means to allow your body to enjoy it. When the body is used to lack of warmth or is programmed to block any closer touch, this sensation starts to feel inhibiting. So it retracts, and that retraction or denial of warmth turns into the sensation of pain we're familiar with carrying. Pain is simply the denial of love and our own unwillingness to surrender the mind to be out of control, out of rationally being able to control the outcome or events of that relationship or relating experience. And when fear takes over because there is no rationality present around it or no awareness, the safe foundation gets pulled from underneath our feet and we remain floating in the space of pain. Pain again, which has the purpose to guide us in facing that fear so we can truly discover the soul that resides underneath and awaken to its existence, or shall I say, awaken its existence. Let me bring in an example here so you can picture it better. Picture waking up in the morning. How do you truly know that you are awake? Is your parameter a thought that passed through your mind? Hey, I'm awake. Or do you feel awake the moment you can sense your breath, feel the ground beneath your feet, you can smell the flowers or the farting leftovers in the air? Hey, that's also a good indicator you're awake too. Our perceptions or perception of being awake are formed first through our sensory system. We find the safety in the truth of their reality by sensing it first, and then we form the thought around them. When we can experience grounding in our environment, our physical senses find soothing and our soul is awakened. And this is when the mind arrives at being or finding peace. Peace that is provided by the connection it has found through the physical environment around it. Just like babies, which develop their cognitive perceptions with time through learning, and their first modality to learn and feel safe becomes available through sensing and exploring the connection to their environment. Even newborn babies' vision is being developed during the first few months of life. It takes on average about 3 months for babies to start seeing more clearly. And it is the same with adults, hence where the 3-month rule emerges when it comes to dating and relationships. The soul, which is infantile or inert, needs approximately 3 months to experience or receive someone to be able to recognize itself in another or not. Where do you think they even got the 90-day rule for non-immigrants entering the United States with the intention to marry a U.S. citizen? If you can't make up your mind within 90 days, you're out. Adios, mi amor. Or the fact that research has found that it takes a person on average 90 days to make habit changes, as the brain also requires that length of time to break and form new habits. So whatever you experience with another, 3 months is enough time for your brain to know whether your needs in that experience are met or not, whether it feels right for you or not. And building that principle in any of your endeavors is not only going to save you time, heartaches, but also give you an opportunity to continue to learn and grow, because it awakens in the environment where that experience gives you a sense of peace and safety. Imagine your soul roaming around like a nomad from bedroom to bedroom. It may end up in a royal suite surrounded by all of the comforts and luxuries you can imagine, but it still carries an unmet yearning for more. And suddenly it finds itself on an air mattress with a stranger in Timbuktu, completely immersed in the moment. I have no idea where that air mattress came from, but let's say it symbolizes a cloud. The feeling of like being on cloud 9. And in that moment of immersion, your soul becomes integrated with your mind, which creates the experience of peace and safety. It is not just the other who created it for you, but rather it is a shared experience you build together by finding the harmony on physical, emotional, and mental alignment. And what becomes the bug here is only when the mind starts rationalizing and doubting the significance of the equilibrium it has discovered, and starts looking back for sensory information that reminds it of potential danger or discomfort. See, I believe that the problem with people is not that we cannot find the person or environment to have this experience. The problem is in allowing it to be a reality, to give ourselves permission to experience it, allowing and trusting it, because we are so programmed to feel at distress, and that distress can again be either physical, mental, or emotional. And I also believe that the only way to reverse that mistrust and allowing ourselves to surrender to where that experience is taking us is to allow life to unfold by learning to emulate those senses, to emulate the senses that feel true and right for us, and not continuously live disconnected from them. Maybe they were not modeled to us. Maybe they got disrupted at some point in time. There could be many reasons to why we seek to repeat those environments and people that we are used to, or choose those familiar sensory experiences rather than allow what is true and right for us to live through. But if we do not allow ourselves to experience that, no one will. And no one will be able to create it for us or convince us to stay there. But what we can do and can be in control of is choosing that environment consciously and start developing it. So when these experiences come into our life, we do not self-sabotage them, or rather allow ourselves to live them, despite the mind's fears splurging in from being unable to rationalize the unknown. I mean, when you think about it, most of life is unknown. What do we truly know? The only true known is in the reality of our sensory experience now, and that reality dictates what the soul weather is like. If it is heavy raining and unsettling, what do? We go out and get an umbrella, or metaphorically speaking, we go out and look for love. But the umbrella is not going to change the weather or stop the rain from falling. Only when the sun rises back up and the clouds move out of the way, love shines its way through, or you begin to see clearly what that awakened soul state is. And for the most part, when we love, the weather is clear, as it helps us to see what is around us. It allows us to more easily interact with our environment than continue to hide under the umbrella. So for that awakening to come to mind, to the conscious realization, we need to experience what is that which gives us a sensory freedom first, a sensory experience of clarity. Notice how I said clarity and not pleasure. We can find something pleasurable, yet it doesn't necessarily mean it brings us clarity. We can enjoy the rain too and find pleasure in being soaked. In the same instance, we may not like the sun so much as it feels too hot. But we cannot deny the fact that one dims or obstructs our ability to see the environment around us clearly, and the other lights it up completely. So we can keep on looking for sensory receiving pleasure, yet we may never feel like it is ever enough until we experience what is it that enough distinctly. The need that we have, that pleasure is trying to attend to. When the true need is dimmed, no amount of pleasure can satisfy it. So it is not in the amount, but the quality. We may have many pleasures, but are they quality pleasures, or are we substituting quantity for quality? It may be the same as saying, we have a mother, but did she provide for us that which we truly needed, or did she provide for us that which she could? Because the reality is, very few mothers have their needs met to be able to attend fully to their children's needs. Even if you want to look at it from evolutionary perspective, yes, men provided security, but that also meant being emotionally or physically absent for most of the time. Or as time evolved and they could be more physically present as they didn't have to be so further away, and providing was more accessible within a relatively shorter proximity, they still didn't have awareness to what is it to be emotionally present. Everyone was simply fulfilling a role, but the interaction between these roles requires changes as the physical circumstances shifted. So now we have come to a place where men are learning about emotional presence while women are learning about physical security and providing the space for men to be present. So the challenge for a woman becomes to provide that emotionally safe space for both the man and the child, while the challenge for the men becomes in remaining present. Both have their set of challenges until the emotional interaction reaches a level of conscious awareness or understanding to what you are both doing there. So, in the midst of all of this learning process, any child that is brought into life simply comes to life in a dynamic where two adults are learning to emotionally relate to each other. So, the child only learns the level of emotional relating the parents have gotten to. Its sensory receptive system is built upon the observation of the emotional environment created around it. Of course, so when there is lack or poor communication on the adult's part, no matter what they're telling that child, its senses are only reflective of their ability to find understanding on conscious level. Until the emotional weather is resolved through the awareness and connection of the mind, the weather remains disturbing. And the only place it can meet clarity is in connecting on mental level. So for that meeting point or connection to happen, what a woman is seeking for is physical security or physical presence, and men for emotional security or emotional presence. Where these two meet are in the ability to sense or connect the physical environment to the emotional needs. Without an awareness to what that sensation, the one we're ultimately seeking to experience, is, everyone will continue, or every soul will continue orbiting around like a nomad. And although that could be interesting to explore for a while, in the long run it is exhausting and disorienting. Disorienting to any purpose and meaning of being here. To find meaning and purpose is possible when the mind can process the information it has gathered and make sense of it in stillness. Do you see, the mind is an interesting thing? It will continue to seek more information until it reaches a practical outlet of applying it. And when it doesn't arrive at one, it makes one turn into an information junkie who feels lost and confused. For example, you may be constantly on the go, meet many people, try different things, learn skills, but what use is any of that when you just keep on accumulating all of that information and when that acquired energy is not exerted? It gets stored and starts to weigh heavy. So our perceptions that we form become overburdened with information, and there is no room to maneuver, be flexible, and allow space to grow. Mental space and head space. And when the mind is incapable to be open to learn and grow, it doesn't have the ability to connect beyond its current perception of organized information on how to. As I said earlier, we gather information and rationalize it so we can share it. And when we are able to share it, we can grow from it. When we become stuck, or when we get stuck to what we know, we limit our ability to further expand on it. And so we lose the ability to connect. So the sensory receptors in our bodies are responsible for obtaining information about the physical world. And what the brain does with time, it starts to select and organize that information. It stores that information as sensations. And so the accumulation and storing of those sensations make up the process of developing our perceptions. So in this case, where a man chooses to be physically present and a woman chooses to be emotionally present, is about creating the space to exchange the stored and accumulated information for it to be intellectualized or take a rational form. And this space challenges both to be receptive and experience their triggered sensory system until they both awaken to their what is in their soul, what the soul truly wants, because only when the soul gets what it wants, it doesn't need to run away. It discovers the place where it belongs. So in this sense, our hunting for soul in actuality is looking for the place where we belong, where the mind is no longer tormented by looking for meaning or answers. And when the mind recognizes where it belongs, the thoughts settle in that clarity, in that presence, and now has this pool of information to create from. When the soul finds the place where it belongs, the mind finds the outlet to process. Imagine it. You may be a great abstract painter, and you keep on landing different artistic jobs, but you cannot apply your abstract abilities there until suddenly you discover an opportunity where you are free to do your abstract paintings and apply your skills. But you will get compensated only once your work is complete. In the first instance, you're being paid for working as a painter, but you do not have the freedom to do it in the way you're most talented in or suited for. Whereas in the second scenario, you have the freedom to bring your visions and ideas to life, but now you may be emotionally triggered as you worry how physically you will be able to sustain yourself in that process. In this case, you're faced with the requirement of needing to be physically present, but also emotionally present, and at first it may not feel very comfortable. Your mind is filled with questions which produce unsettling thoughts, seeking for answers. Since there is no other being around you, the only outlet or form of communication now happens through you beginning to paint. So through the process of painting, those abstract sensations start materializing as an image on the canvas. Your thoughts and emotions start being transferred to and coming out on the surface of that canvas. Now that you are able to see them in front of you or bring them out of you, your soul finds clarity. It finds the outlet of expression where it belongs. So you become immersed in that flow of creating, as when your mind cannot find a rational answer to how you will physically sustain your existence, the soul still finds soothing and a place where it can soothe itself and find the comfort in the meantime. The meaning comes in the process itself, finding that place where you belong, and therefore why artists can also be very sensitive to their interactions with others. As any human coming into their intimate space, ultimately their soul is sensitive to receiving the presence of the other, who represents an outlet, the outlet for expression, as their sensory system is very heightened and connected to that sensation of freedom, or having the ability to create freely from the inside, not abide by external requirements. Ultimately, this is what we're seeking for on soul level from a human interaction, a soul that our sensory system experience this sensation of belonging, because there we find the outlet to process our emotions, thoughts, and derive to the awareness of meaning. The compensation of your work in such a deep, intimate involvement is meaning, and so the reward is love, when you awaken to that meaning. Which brings me again to the beginning, that we cannot awaken unless we are on a hunt for the soul. And the process of hunting comes to our conscious awareness when we learn to nurture and how to nurture our sensory receptive system through recognizing what is emotionally soothing. And even if you meet many people that you feel for or feel emotionally connected to, when the mind cannot recognize or rationalize that interaction and how it is the source of receiving answers, because where the soul belongs, it finds the answers, the lack of coherency turns into a sensory deprivation of the vestibular sense, which contributes to our cognitive function by finding answers through our physical surrounding, as it is responsible for multisensory integration. Because when we are able to integrate our senses, we reach a level of intellect or knowing. And what knowing provides is the ability to experience certainty in the self. Therefore, mental stimulation is necessary in a relationship to experience that level of knowing. As the more the mind is being stimulated, the more you train your thinking muscle to process the information it has gathered. And the ability to process it creates mental flexibility rather than rigidity. And so, the more flexibility one creates in the mind, the more it can shift its perception, which allows it to form new thoughts. When the senses, touch, smell, taste, hear, and vision, and thoughts find coherency, we build emotional connection. And when that connection is established, or there is this coherency or alignment created, there is a feeling of almost weightlessness. That's what certainty feels like, or knowing, as if weight has been lifted off of your shoulders, the weight of the mind, of being overactive. So, in this sense, awakening or soul awakening is the experience of weightlessness. And when you imagine, what does the experience of being in love feel like? It is the same as you feel uplifted, light, and floating on cloud nine or an air mattress. So, aside from emotionally feeling connected to someone, as humans, we also connect based on the ability to stimulate the mind so it can assimilate the information that it has gathered, and our thoughts can find grounding in the experience or sensation of weightlessness, the sensation of awakening. And to put things in perspective, both the body and the mind grow over time. But while the body grows towards the pull of gravity, the mind grows through elevation or anti-gravity. So even if physical attraction is necessary, as we are still souls in a human or physical form, in the long run, what is stronger or more binding or responsible to sustain that soulful connection is mental attraction, as only through that mind-to-mind connection we can continue to establish and sustain that sense of weightlessness. So I do believe that mental attraction in the sense of soul awakening is much stronger than the physical attraction itself, because we cannot run away from the mind even when we close our eyes or try to disassociate from the physical body. We can orgasm or experience physical release for a moment, but mentally, that lack of sensory integration, it is all still there. It still lives in the mind as unsettling thoughts. So that mental release happens when we experience mental connection with someone to the degree of complete physical sensory integration. It is like that aha moment of I get it, I feel seen and I see you. And in that physical and emotional presence, we awaken the physical experience of belonging and emotional experience of weightlessness. That knowing is what we call trust. And when we trust, we discover the safety and freedom to surrender or let go completely. It's like the death of hunting for survival and awakening to being home. Home simply represents the physical environment our soul lives in, and its protection is love. Sometimes I find it difficult to speak about this as words seem limiting in being able to fully express the depths of this sensation. Instead, I do find it much easier and beneficial to create those experiences as when that knowing reaches someone on soul level and connects to that experience, then the mind can much easily navigate to the truth of it. Hence, to understand what that environment feels and looks like for us, we need to create, emulate, and connect to the experience of soul awakening. It's only when we are connected to the truth living in the soul, we receive the reward at the end of the hunt, which is love. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope you found this message informative and helpful. And if you did, please share, like, and subscribe. And again, thank you for stopping by and watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.